Hey there everybody, welcome to another installment in my AX8 tutorials. Today I want to show you how you can use the AX8, or again, as always, these always apply to the AX as a tube power amp simulator to use with an external preamp. For anybody who's got a particular, you might have a pedal you really like and that you use, in front of a clean amp or something like that, and you want to use the AX8 merely for effects, but then you also want to run direct. This is a cool compromise, and if you're like me and you've got a rack full of old 80s preamps and you want to record with them without having to set up another power amp and a cab, this is a great solution. So before I get started, I've got a Marshall JMP1 plugged in. Guitar's going to the JMP1. The non-speaker emulated output of the JMP1 is going into the front of the AX8, and spudoof cable straight into my computer. So this is what it sounds like, and be warned, this is going to sound like absolute garbage. This is just a direct signal from the JMP1. Like a bunch of bees in a jam jar. Sounds terrible. So first thing we can try before we delve into the whole tube thing is just chucking an impulse response on that. So I've got two of Justin York's bipolar pack cab IRs, and this is what it sounds like now. Which I think sounds way better. Just for a comparison, I'm going to bypass the IR and I'm going to show you what the speaker emulated sound on the JMP1 sounds like. Let me just physically plug that in. So there's a speaker emulation on the JMP1. And then let's go back and hear the JMP1 through that cab block. I'm going to set the level here correctly. Not too bad. At the moment, I think the speaker emulated out sounds a little bit better. A couple of things you could do here. I mean, you could bring the high cut down a little bit. And obviously we're using V30 speakers here, so we can expect them to sound a bit brighter and scooped, which is what I'm hearing. So anyway, that's not a bad first attempt. Let me take that high cut back to where it was. Now let's see how we can do this tube power amp emulation. The block we're going to use is the tube pre, which I've conveniently got dialed up. So let's have a listen to how that sounds with the cab IR. It doesn't sound that much better, but what we're going to do is we're going to delve into the power amp. So at the moment, that's just acting like basically like a channel strip in a studio. It's not doing anything special. Let's delve into the power amp section and actually get some stuff cooking. So what I've done is I've turned the negative feedback control. Normally that's at 0. Turn that up to 5. Let's play around with the tube type. I'll put on EL34. Let's have a listen to that. And let's have a look at the speaker drive section. I've got motor drive on and the motor drive time constant. Maybe I'll turn that down a little bit and put the time constant like 100 milliseconds rather than 50, a little bit looser. And I'll do the same thing. I'll play around with the sag control in here. If I crank it up, if I turn it down, it's not bad at all. What we can do is, I can match this to my speaker cab, the low frequency resonance, which tidies things up a little bit. Play around with maybe the output comp. Let's try that. I think I liked it more about 2. And let's go back to the power amp section and play around with a few things. You can play around with these, like the presence frequency and the depth frequency. In fact, why not dial in a little bit of presence and a little bit of depth? I'll set them both to 3, so that sounds a bit better. And then you've got these cut, fat, and bright switches. turn that down a little bit so that the guitar's not absolutely blowing your head off. Fat. I'm going to leave the EQ and stuff like that alone, but another thing you can do is, if you turn the level down and you want some saturation, is to crank the master up. And if you turn the supply sag up while you're doing that, that is really going to have a big impact on the way it feels. I'll turn that down a little bit more, actually. There we go. All right, and you can play around with the preamp tube type. Very, very subtle differences. One cool one is the harmonics. And the definition control. Depending on what you want to go for. The definition's not bad. I might turn that up to about 1. And let's just remember what that sounds like with that bypass. All right, a couple of other things that you can play around with are the transformer match. Let's have a listen to if you want to kind of get that mismatched transformer speaker thing happening. That one's, I like around 1.1. Same thing with the transformer grind control. You can always add a little bit of low or high resonance in there as well. Kind of emulate that thickness thing. One thing you can do as well is, if I leave this, I'm going to save this real quick. Let's have a look at another preset and have a look at what the low resonance and high resonance frequencies are in, say, like a Marshall JCM 800 or something like that. I'll just bring up a preset really quickly. This one is the Brit number 34. That's a lot of noise as well, so let me just do this. All right, if we have a look at the amp and we go to the power amp tab, power supply, preamp, where's that monitor? Here. So you can see here on this one, I might copy these settings over where you've got the low resonance, 5.83, high resonance, all these kind of things, transformer drive at 1. I'm going to copy those over to my tube pre thing with the correct sort of tube settings there and see how we go. Let's try all of that. So I'll go back to my power amp. Probably should have done this at the start. So if you were still with me, thank you for putting up with all of this. I'm still in the process of figuring all this stuff out. So yeah, that was about there. Somewhere about here. These aren't the exact values, but and I think this one was turned down a little bit. So there we go. That looks a little bit more like the Marshall tab. Let's have a listen. I'll turn that down again. This is one problem I've had with some of my videos is I talk too quietly and I play guitar too loud. Let's turn that transformer drive up to 1 as well. I think that's pretty cool there. Again, the dynamic controls, completely up to you if you want to play around with that. Personally, because I'm running a preamp, I'd probably go back now and start tweaking the tone from the actual guitar preamp. For example, I'm on channel OD1. Here's OD2 on the JMP1. And if I play with the EQ a little bit, which I'm going to do now, I apologize about that. That is the input on the preamp. It's a bit dodgy. And with the power amp bypassed, and of course you can tailor this to your favorite speaker of choice. Man, that's so noisy. Again, if in a real world situation, I would just bring up the JMP1 model here in the Axe-Fx and not worry about doing this. But if you've got a rare piece of gear that's not modeled, like maybe an 80A MP1 or a Demeter, TGP or something like that, that you're really attached to, this is a great way to record direct with it. I'll just show you this with a different impulse. One that I really like are the Tonic IRs, this green 3 mixes with a greenback IR. Let me kill that noise as well. That's a bit better. All right. The advantage to this approach, obviously I'm going to wrap this up, is, you can add effects as you like and go absolutely nuts. Like, let's put some delay on in stereo. Yeah. I like that. Or you can go for, put a stereo chorus and a delay and live out, or, some pitch detune. That's a good one. And live out all your 80s fantasy tones, which is really why we're all here. Let's try that with the old detune. Yeah. All right, let's compare that one last time to the DI out on the JMP1, the speaker emulated out, see if it sounds any better. So there's that, and now with this power amp and cabinet thing that I've concocted, hopefully it sounds better. Better is a very relative term. With the effects off, I think it's a little bit more convincing. And I think that is not too bad at all. Like I was saying, this approach isn't for everyone. It's a bit labor intensive, but I'll put this preset up if you want to download it. I'll turn, these effects off. And yeah, there you go. There's how you can emulate a tube power amp in the Axe-Fx or AX8 to use with your favorite preamp and not have to put up with the crummy speaker emulation in your preamp, or don't have to worry about, buying a power amp and a bunch of microphones and making an ISO booth or putting it in another room. You can do it all in the box. Really, really easy. Well, relatively easy. If you've followed this whole tutorial, that's probably the hard part, listening to me ramble on. But anyway, there we go. I will see you guys next time. Thank you very much. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers.